Before I start, I'd like to say a prayer of invocation. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurtishe Namaha. Vasudevam Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishna Vande Jagadgurum. So thank you everyone for the opportunity to make a presentation here at the IAPIC 2025. My name is Aristotle. I'm from Singapore. And my field, actually my field is in character education, and I do curriculum study, as well as worldview study, and although my initial background was in accountancy, and I was a journalist with the Singapore local TV station, Channel News Asia. The topic of the whole conference, actually, the theme of the conference is pretty interesting, and that's what drew me to come from Singapore here, was the idea of global peace and harmony, which is the central theme, actually, because in a world of conflict, external conflict, which is what we see all around us now, and internal conflict, which we all experience ourselves, and which manifests externally, right? So the idea of science and spirituality as two domains of human existence, which are perceived to be in conflict with each other, is very apt, because what seems to be conflicting, and we're trying to get a harmony and peace out of these two different domains of human existence. We've heard a lot of presentations about a lot of things, a lot of topics about life, about crime, about spaceships, about medicine. And these are all different topics, and we can find that there are conflicting views and perspectives about these topics, right? The conflicting views about medicine, there's conflicting views about, like Muni Maharaj was talking about at the theoretical physics level. There are conflicting paradigms within every sphere of human knowledge. Is that true? Do we experience that in our... And because of that, the question about how do we get a harmony, not just global harmony, but harmony in those individual fields. And my presentation today is to actually try to suggest and address a meta perspective at the first principles level about how the different domains of human existence can be harmonized. And I hope it'll be useful. I won't take up too much of your time. I understand it's running late. So this is a quote from Dr. T.D. Singh, who is the international director, was the international director of the Bachelor Institute. He's a founding member of the United Religions Initiative and pioneer of the synthesis of science-spirituality dialogue. And he says that we have to bring in the study of science and religion within, spirituality and religion within science and vice versa. And that's what this conference is trying to do. And Srila Prabhupada, who is known as who's termed as the visionary saint for the modern scientific age, and the founder Acharya of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, he says that all areas of human knowledge, right, such as art, science, philosophy, chemistry, physics, psychology, and we can see economics, politics, etc. By culture of these types of knowledge, human society can attain perfection of life. And this perfection of life culminates in realization of the Supreme Being, Vishnu, God. So all different facets of knowledge has to come to a culmination. That's what Srila Prabhupada is suggesting. Right? Background, and if some of you know Arabic, I see in Hyderabad there are Arabics everywhere. This just means Assalamu alaikum, right? Which is peace be unto you. Now, so peace is now at the forefront of all our minds, right? Like we talked earlier about conflict on international stage, and there's so many global attempts at peace. At the same time, we're looking at peace at the individual level, right? And there's a growing concern about mental health, depression, suicide, right? And it's a growing problem, right? The suicide rates in Singapore and some countries, developed countries, are very high for the elderly, as well as for the adolescents. And even some now in primary school, they're taking their own lives. So this is a very real problem that we are facing. So if we go to a deeper principle, you can say an overarching principle if you like, right? It's about the character of the individual and the character of society, if you think about it. And that's what it is, according to what my study is trying to suggest, right? And I'm using character education, or the notion of character, as a case of study to present this worldview systems kind of an approach. And specifically for its implications and significance on meaning and purpose. So an overview of my study, and I've got quite a number of points, but I'll run through some of these very fast, right? So I'll start with the context, and I'll come to what's the conclusion of it, right? We'll just go through that. So we know this. We see this everywhere, at least on TV. When we open, we can see it, and in some places, even worse than this, right? Now, this is an interesting phenomenon. If you see the picture on your left, you see a kidney and an iPhone. And this is a true thing, right? You know what happened? So this guy in China, he wanted an iPhone so badly. What did he do? He sold one of his kidneys to get the money to buy the iPhone. So to what extent would you go to sell your soul, so to speak? Right? So the underlying disposition, if we were to examine it, and we don't have time to discuss it in detail, but if we were to examine it, it's a culture of exploitation, as what I think Muni Maharaj had talked about a little bit, touched on. Culture of exploitation versus a culture of service or dedication. Now, in between, there's always that fine line in between, is that culture of abnegation, right? Or just being aloof of things. Now, so we all agree, scholars all agree, all scholars in the academic field, they agree that character is very important for schools. Interestingly, the concept of character is also contested. There's also a contestation, a conflict between, no, this is how character should be, and that's how character should be. And there are three underlying narratives, or you can say ideas about character, and that's deontology, which is Immanuel Kant talks about it a lot. It's about notion of duty, right? Our duty. You can say dharma also, in a sense, is deontology, right? And then utilitarianism, right? What are the outcomes? I use it, okay, how are the outcomes? I'm just doing something for the outcome. And virtue ethics, that means a state of being of just the qualities of, say, truthfulness and forgiveness and simplicity and humility, right? So these are three different strands, or you can say ideas about what character should be, right? So you can think of this as the tree of character, like the tree of life. But tree of character, has got these competing branches and sub-branches, and they are all actually at odds and critical of each other's ideas. Oops. Okay, so contestations. I shouldn't have used, yeah. Now, so just we talked about it. Now, within each category, right, let's say virtues, right, the Confucians have got certain virtues that they think are very important. They call them the Ren, which is benevolence, right, which is, and also they talk about filial piety to be very, very important, to be loyal to your parents. That's like the highest, most important virtue. And some other virtues are not so important compared to that. But in another society, some other bag of virtues are deemed more important. Again, there's a competition. No, these virtues are important. And then the question is, how is this determined? Who determines which virtues are more important and less important? Say about duty. You got this dharma. Dharma as a father, dharma as a wife, dharma as a daughter, dharma as a ruler. So when there are competing versions of dharma, what do you do? When there is a conflict, what happens? Which is more important? And then outcomes, right? Different outcomes. When you do something, you know different outcomes. So you have to decide which outcomes are more important, right? Cost-benefit analysis and stuff. These are also outcomes-based. Okay? So we can see that the contestations in character, if we were to analyze them again, can be grouped. At least scholars in the field have grouped them into traditional and progressive approaches to character education. And they are critical of each other again. All the different notions are critical of each other. So, but traditionalism is focused on the society, the needs and interests of society. Whereas progressivism is really focused on the needs and needs and interests of the individual. And then there's a clash. John Dewey wrote a book about the child and the curriculum. So he's trying to bridge that you can say that gap, right? And the main ideas, you can say, is a competition or dialectic, if you like, the dichotomy of nature and nurture, authority versus autonomy, right? The teacher or the being a role model or a facilitator. So these are the problems in education, and you can think about these are problems in society, right? Because these are both the individual and society are part of the same human fabric, right? Now, so that's why there is a need to go at a deeper level to have a philosophical understanding. And education is a contested field, right? And I'm not going to go deep into that, but in general, you can see there's the human capital model, the rights model, capabilities model, and this actually sums it up in a pictorial form, that some models are more inclined to the needs and interests of the individual, versus some are more inclined to the needs and interests of society. Okay? So, but the question is, what's the meaning and purpose, right? Which that's not really addressed when we talk about these contestations. We don't talk about the meaning and purpose. We just talk about the value systems that are, or the values or what's being valued as competing, but we don't talk about the broader view. Okay? So that's why, and you like to use this analogy to explain these contestations, all relative viewpoints, like a compass on a map, right? I might be standing here, and I want to go to a certain direction, and someone else is standing at another location and trying to go to the other direction, and both have different ways of going to the direction, to a destination. And maybe they have different destinations, but all of it is still in the same fabric. So the contestations of the individual and society, right, are just relative viewpoints. Now, relative viewpoints does not negate an absolute viewpoint. Because, let's say this camera over here, I've got a certain perspective of it, you might have a different perspective of it, someone at the back of the room has a different perspective of it. But all our relative perspectives are contingent on the objective existence of the camera. If we deny the camera, the objective existence of the camera, then these relative positions or perspectives have got no locus standi. There needs to be an objective reality for there to be subjective or relative perspectives. Yeah? So this is the idea. So my whole case for this study, right, was that we need to understand worldviews because the contestations are contestation of values. And values, if we talk about in terms of philosophy, is part of axiology. And axiology is just one domain of human existence. Okay? Okay? So, yeah, we have different perspectives because we see things differently. We talked about that, right? And normally, almost all fields are contested, but some fields are hotly contested, like religion is hotly contested. Citizenship is hotly contested. Okay, and all of it is because of the dialectic of the individual and society. So I'm not going to skip all this, right? But what I like to say is that the importance of worldview study is to come to the point of meaning and purpose. Right? And my study has shown that teleology is crucial in a worldview. Okay, I'm going to skip this because of the purpose of time. Okay, so what I did in this method was that I used a dialectical method, like I played the Socratic dialogues, right, in my study, which I'm not going to discuss here, right? And then I used a philosophical method of analyzing the concepts and assumptions of character, of worldview, etc. Because even worldview is a contested concept, right? And more importantly is systems theory. And I feel that this is significant. If we really want to have harmony, we have to look at things as a system. I think the professor just now earlier who spoke about holistic medicine and some other speakers had alluded to the point of looking at things as an integrated manner. Okay? So we need to consider a phenomenon in its entirety and not merely as the sum of its parts and most basic units. So if we're looking at science, right, just one area of science. For example, right, when you go to a doctor and if they're just, you have a leg pain and they're just examining your knee, but they don't consider the other parts of your body and they just treat your knee, then it might have an effect on another part of your body which you are ill. So holistic medicine means, like we heard, that you treat the whole body. And even in school, right, when we teach children, we teach them the whole body first, and then we say, this is the eye, this is the nose, this is the leg, this is the mouth. We don't teach them about just the eye first, and then the mouth, and then the toes, right? We tell them, this is the whole human body, and then we talk about the individual parts. And it's very important, it's logical. And if you have a jigsaw puzzle, can you imagine if you have a 10,000-piece jigsaw, and you just give someone to try to solve it, without knowing how it actually looks like, it might take ages, or you might not even try to solve it. Okay, so what I employed in the study is to come up with this systems framework is Bronfenbrenner. I think some of you might have heard of him. Yuri Bronfenbrenner. He actually came up with this ecological systems model, and he was actually from the sciences, right? And he talked about how there is the basic microsystem. A simple example is just say, for example, you and your family, that's your microsystem. And then your neighborhood might be your exosystem, and then the other, broader than your neighborhood, the different places, would be the townships around it is a mesosystem, and your whole country is your macrosystem. So we are situated as a phenomenon within a microsystem, and there are greater systems around it. Now, at the same time, in terms of worldview, I looked at Ken Fung's idea and actually Nate's idea of different categories of worldview. And this is very significant because there are many ways the worldviews can be defined or categorized. But this talks about it in terms of the facets or domains of human knowledge. And you think about it, metaphysics is a very important area, right? The nature of reality. What does everything consist of? What is the sum and substance of this universe, right? Is it just all like what we heard in the previous leptons and quarks and atoms and molecules? Or is it something else, like consciousness that was suggested in some of the talks, right? And then epistemology is key, right? How do we know what we know? And that was also alluded in the talks, right? Is everything based on empiricism? That means just what we observe, what we can see by the five senses, or something based on inference? And this was a huge debate in the Western during the period of the Western Enlightenment. And then there's the area of cosmology, right? How the world is like, what's the structure, and everyone's got different ideas of what the world is, what the universe is like, right? And theology, the ideas of God, competing ideas of religion or no religion, right? Or scientism, for instance. But all of this has an impact on teleology, the telos. Because, which I'll discuss later, the telos is based on what the telos can be seen in terms of function or purpose. So, for example, this mic has got a function. I can use it as a device for projecting my voice, right? I could use it as a tool for punishing someone, right? For instance, in hitting someone, right? I can use it as a decorative device. I can use it for many purposes, but actually, it also has an inherent purpose. Now, this inherent purpose is based on its nature, ontology, and we know, how do we know? We know it from the people who make it, for instance, right? And other people who tell us, okay. So that's why telos is very, very important. And now, once we know the purpose of it, then we can ask ourselves whether it's valuable. So if I have a purpose, I need a mic to speak in a large room for thousands of people, will this mic be sufficient? Or will the woofer be sufficient? So value is contingent on the purpose. If I want to train for the Olympics and I want to win the Olympics, and any activity like binging on food is not helpful for my purpose of winning the Olympics, that's bad for me. So the value is negative. But exercise and good sleep and good diet helps me to achieve that purpose, then the value is positive. Right? So value contingent on purpose contingent on nature of it, the ontology of it. Okay? And then the last one is the relationships between these different dimensions, which is what Mortimer Adler talks about, which I'm not going to go through now. Okay? So this is the skeleton framework which I'm suggesting, right, based on these three different ideas, right, that metaphysics is the core level of a worldview. So all of us have different ideas about what's the nature of reality, right? And all of us have different ideas after that on how we know what we know. So for example, if I believe in intuitive, in a spiritual dimension and consciousness, etc., then I will consider intuition and revelation, etc., to be a form of epistemology. But if I consider only everything to be empirical, everything to be just matter, then my epistemology will be focused on empiricism, for instance. Okay, and then the next level, mesosystem will be, you can see the exosystem consists of cosmology, teleology, and theology. Because even beliefs about God and etc., religious beliefs, they influence our purpose. And the ideas of the universe also influence our purpose. But think about it, all of it, actually, my next slide, is influencing each other. Right? And in cosmology, you can talk about biology, physics, etc. I just put a few, right? In teleology, you got anthropology, purpose of man, and all that. And then you have theology, you have eschatology, right? What happens when you die, etc. Right? So different ideas, different subsets of the different domains. But the main domains are metaphysics, epistemology, like that. And finally, what's of value and what's meaningful, that comes on in axiology. What's meaningful to me? Now, we all have different belief systems. We believe something about metaphysics, we believe something about axiology, we believe something about cosmology. Now, my proposition is, are they coherent? If they're not coherent, then we have to examine our worldview again and maybe learn from other worldviews and try to develop that internal harmony of worldviews. So that's something which is what this worldview system framework is about. Actually, this is the case that I was trying to make. So character, so whatever we are studying, so for example, I'm studying character, I'm trying to understand character in relation to all of these different domains of worldview. Now, so the key features of the framework is teleology is very, very important. It's central, but it's influenced by all these other ideas, right? And meaning and purpose, in the end, is the one that takes us forward. Okay, notion of value is key, which is same, right? And it's all determined by our conception of nature of reality. Okay, I'm almost done. Scope of analysis, what I did was I looked at the ancient Indian, ancient Chinese, and ancient Greek philosophies, right? To look at their ideas about character, education, and even teleology especially, right? And of course, ideas from the Western Enlightenment, because these are the two. I first initially considered also the age of the Renaissance, but the age of the Renaissance actually was still a development of the ancient Greeks. But it's only the Western Enlightenment was a break from that, was a break from the Greeks, right? Now, so this is what I found. The contestation is a contestation of values, right? You can see them, samurais and boxings and even shouting and chariots, depending on from ancient to current. There has been a constant contestation of values from ancient civilizations to now, right? And what underpins that contestation are these points, right? Purpose of existence, nature of reality, ways of knowing, and what's the human condition. These four ideas, right, actually are underpinning our contestation of values and conflicts that we have at the societal level. Oops. Okay. This is just another detail, but I'm not going to go through this. It's just about to show that teleology is connected to all the other four, because this guy called MacDonald, right, he said that the teleological features, there are four. One is origin, right, of your theology, like external theology or internal theology, right? That makes a difference in your idea about meaning and purpose. And of course, metaphysics, epistemology, and ideas about God. That influences the theology. And that's the cause of the conflicts. Okay, so what's the significance? I'm almost done. Significance is that adoption of a worldview systems approach fills the gap in the field of character education, as there appears to be a lack of a unitary theoretical framework, because everything is a contestation of values, right? And that's why we situate character beyond just ethics, and we need to include other worldview domains. Then worldview systems may also be applied beyond character to other areas of knowledge, not just education and social science, I would say every area of knowledge, even religion, right? So the key is that a worldview is an ecological system, and it's a unity of different domains, and there are interrelationships between these different domains. Most important, it's a logical conception of worldview. It's not just a belief system. It's not just I believe and you believe. It's a logical conception of worldview, and we need to try to find coherence of the interrelationships of the various domains. Okay, what can it be used for? We can try to find a common ground by examining other people's worldviews, examining our own worldviews, right? To get enduring solutions by discussing ideas at these domains, right? We can evaluate ourselves and our own belief systems. And more importantly, I'd say that we need to explore the role of the nature of life and the meaning and purpose of life, right? In the context of these different worldview positions that we have, because that has a bearing on meaning and purpose. So finally, the coherence of worldview domains may also be applied to other fields of human knowledge and endeavor beyond character, with the objective of striving for peaceful, harmonious, and fulfilling existence, both for the individual and society, or in the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, for attaining eudaimonia, right? And I'd like to leave you with a couple of quotes. The distinction between the electron and the spiriton is the electron has no consciousness and the spiriton has consciousness, the difference between life and matter. And Consciousness by Michael Polanyi, consciousness is a principle that fundamentally transcends not only physics and chemistry, but also the mechanistic principles of living beings. I think this is key. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
I hope we have some questions for Aristotle ji. Yeah.
The problem in education now, there's no objective, there's no meaning and purpose, intrinsic meaning and purpose in the curriculum. So we need that, meaning and purpose in curriculum.
So first point I want to... Okay. Just this is end of that. So what I want to say that you have concluded very nice, the infinite perspective. So you know, Hegel, G.W. of Hegel has told very nice thing about objective consciousness and subjective consciousness. Objective consciousness is the object whom that belongs. Obviously, these all things, the rose, flower, human, frog, these are not our objects. This is coming from God. So they belongs to him. So what is the owner's perspective? That is objective. That is same for everybody. But we have taken those objects as ours, even though we are not the owners. So these are all subjective perspective. So how to transcend from subjective to objective, consciousness, that's, the different schools they're teaching. So thank you very much for your nice explanation.
I think we can discuss tea time. We have crossed. Tea time we can do, no? You have tea and discuss. What is that?
I just one word.
Quickly, 1 minute.
Only 1 minute, sir. Sir, thank you, Maharaj. One important question, sir, actually. So, regarding to, you pointed out on the cosmology, sir, actually. So, on that, a design thinking process steps is needed, sir, actually. So, that is very useful, present trend, actually. It's a very good presentation, sir. But ideation stage and that analysis and interpretation regarding to that word, sir, actually. Okay, it is maybe very useful to all, sir, actually. In pointing to current research also, because I am working as a director R&D, sir, actually. That's why, please, sir, okay? Can you tell only one word? I am very happy about that interpretation regarding to that cosmology.
No, cosmology, everyone has different ideas of cosmology. Yeah. According to the religious scripture, according to scientific worldviews. The question is now whether the cosmological perspective, how does it connect with the teleology and axiology? How is it cohere?
Yeah.
And the epistemology, how is it cohere? Is it coherent or not coherent? Because we can believe a lot of things, but is it coherent in all aspects of domain? That's my point.
Yeah. DTA steps, sir. I am requesting. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aristotle Nandiji. We will break for tea for a few minutes, please. Thank you.